What's up, everybody? Welcome to ESPN FC live here on YouTube every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday alongside Shaka Hislop. I'm Dalen Shaka. Great to be with you here. We got a great show coming up. We will get to Thomas Tuchel's, it was mutual departure from Bayern Munich. We will get to that. Shortly, we will talk about Lionel Messi. They start their MLS campaign tonight against Real Salt Lake, and will they win the MLS Cup, and how all these summer other tournaments may impact that club. But we start with Manchester United, who've been on a good run of form. Now they've won 4 straight in league play. Shaq, I feel like we did this in November when they were struggling in Champions League, winning some league games. Are they turning a corner? So let's run it back. Like, are you a believer that this form we've seen, and particularly youngsters, Højlund, Garnacho, Manu, can continue to play at the level they have to get United? They're 3 points off the top 5, and that may be the number you need, 5 or better, to be in the Champions League next year with the coefficient, the new system. Are you a believer that they've turned a corner at this point in time in the season?
Well, it depends on exactly what you mean by turning the corner in terms of Manchester United, playing a whole lot better than they were 3 or 4 months ago. No question. Højlund has found some form. I think he always threatened to do that, but of course, the longer he goes without scoring initially, the more questions you have. Then finally he finds his rhythm, and he's showing the player that he can be. Manu, I think, has been the big story of the season so far. I mean, everything about him, and not just about Manchester United, everything about him and all that he's shown has simply been outstanding. He's playing with a head that suggests he's a lot older than he actually is. And Manchester United have a player, albeit a defensive midfielder, that they can build a team around, or so it seems. Garnacho, I think, has always shown that he's a prodigious talent, but a little erratic at times. That again is a symptom of youth. Maybe that settles down and he gets better as he goes on. So Manchester United are showing that they have at least the startings of a team that they can build around. I'm reluctant to go any further because I still feel they're a long way from the top 3 in the Premier League right now, which I think Manchester United deserve to be mentioned as a part of. Whether they can squeeze into top 4, it depends on Aston Villa's inconsistencies and the job that Postecoglou continues to do. So we wait to see how that continues to develop with them. But at least it's better than it was 3 or 4 months ago.
And we got Jim Ratcliffe now in there and starting to pull the strings as it relates to the front office. But you just did mention that. We're talking about Manchester United. And we're not talking about competing for trophies. We're not talking about competing in Europe. We're talking about just getting access to Europe again. If that is the goal, do you feel like where they're at right now, like, would you put money? You said you were there now. Would you put money on them actually getting in that Champions League spot?
I still think that there's too much ground to make up on both Villa and Spurs. It's doable, no question. It absolutely is doable. But if you're asking me if I'm a betting man, which I'm not, and asking me to place a bet on whether it's Spurs or Villa or Manchester United, I'll go Spurs or Villa.
Okay. Did you think now Erik ten Hag had very much discussed battles with Jadon Sancho? I don't know if it's a win or a club loss to then have to loan him out to Borussia Dortmund and have an asset that they spent that much money on that's not going to be productive for the club. Obviously, some issues with Rashford and whatnot. Do you feel like he is the right man for this job still? Like that he's the guy that they're going to hang their hat on as they've had to rebuild the front office? Will Ten Hag be brought along to continue that?
Yeah, I think a lot of what happens between now and the end of the season determines that. Listen, the Jadon Sancho thing is bemusing. And while Ten Hag has been lumbered with it, and yes, it's on Ten Hag that he's gone to Dortmund and seems to be doing so well enough there. More managers than Erik ten Hag had their issues with Jadon Sancho. He has not performed since his arrival at Old Trafford. So something had to be done. And while, yes, you take an almighty loss, albeit he's gone to Dortmund on loan, on a player like Jadon Sancho, it wasn't working out. So you have to, given the managers that came before, I have no reason to suggest that it's going to turn around for Jadon Sancho at Manchester United. So you have to figure out how to get him out. But he costs a lot of money. He's on an incredible wage, which nobody will pick up. So Manchester United are kind of on a lose-lose with Jadon Sancho. Marcus Rashford is slightly different. Given what we saw from Rashford back end of last season, given what we've seen with some consistency in the England national team, I think there'll be more clubs willing to take a chance on Marcus Rashford. Of course, a player who's come through their academy, so they aren't lumbered with that transfer fee as well in trying to move him on. So we will see. But and why again I'm reluctant to go one way or the other firmly with Jadon Sancho is because October, November of 2022, I said Marcus Rashford had to go. He was linked with PSG, I think, at the time, and I thought that was the best thing for both Rashford and Manchester United. And then all of a sudden, the World Cup 2022, and all of a sudden, post-World Cup 2022, and Marcus Rashford was just simply incredible. And without him, they wouldn't finish top four. I don't think that's beyond debate. So I'm a little bit reluctant to go that harsh again because, as he's shown, sometimes all of a sudden things turn. Maybe kind of given the resurgence and this form and maybe some confidence, Marcus Rashford turns it around again. No real science to say that, but I'm just not. I'm hedging my bets this time around.
From your experience, when you have these kind of management takeovers, and obviously Jim Ratcliffe is a very successful businessman, we know he comes in with intentions to get this club back to where they expect to be. But they need money to maybe go out and make some moves. The financial fair play rules and other financial pieces are in play here. And you mentioned Rashford being a homegrown talent. Does that make him more likely? Would you be willing? Would you think they may sell him given his situation?
Well, it's all profit. It's all net profit if Marcus Rashford moves on. And while Sir Jim Ratcliffe comes in and there's a new injection of cash, you saw last summer Manchester United were a little bit hamstrung in how much they could spend because of that, because of the financial fair play rules. So whether Manchester United feel the need to kind of cash in on Marcus Rashford in an effort to be able to spend to continue to compete, because I'm not sure how long Manchester United are just kind of happy or settle for being in a top four discussion as opposed to a top three discussion, because again, as of right now, I don't see them breaking into that top three. That's for them to decide, I guess. I just don't see it. So maybe the sensible thing is to bring in all that profit and then spend to bolster your squad in a way that the club needs. And of course, that spending can be spread out over the next few years, which all keeps within financial fair play.
It's such a huge time because you mentioned, like, you got to recruit these players, though, they want to compete. To be in the Champions League is the huge carrot with the stick situation. So that they do need these results, and they do still compare themselves to the top three teams in this league, and they still go away to City. They have Arsenal and Liverpool come to Old Trafford. So how those games fare may actually have a reflection on Ten Hag, as we said, long term, and if he is the guy or not. They did bring in a goalkeeper, obviously, Andre Onana, who had some really tough games and moments early on in his campaign. He's tied for third in the Premier League in clean sheets. He's had some better showings. Or do you believe that the guy at the back is the right person for him?
Listen, I think Onana is an incredibly talented goalkeeper. I felt so all along. I thought he got off on the wrong foot in terms of, and we've had this discussion. I feel that I got the impression that Ten Hag says to Onana, I needed to be the leader. I needed to take charge back there. And that became his primary focus, as opposed to just figuring out his own role within the team, be just settling into the position of being Manchester United's number one. Once you get your feet settled, once you're able to establish your own presence within that goal, then you can start to marshal your back four and do some of those other things that goalkeepers at that club needed to do. I just felt he got the horse before the cart in that respect, and it seems to be settling back down now. But again, like so much about Manchester United, you're a little bit reluctant to be too enthused about it, because while results have been good, performances haven't. And while the old cliche is, yes, good teams have to know how to win ugly, that's the exception, not the rule. And with Manchester United, I just haven't seen enough good. We've got good results, but nowhere near enough good performances consistently.
I'm right there with you. Look at the odds right now for them to get into the top four. They're 3.5 to 1, and I just don't think they're going to have enough performances requisite to be there. In the upcoming schedule, they have Fulham at home, which should be a winnable game. But then you go on the road to City. you host Everton, you host Sheffield United, you go to Brentford. This next 5 games, they could really make some headway if they start turning in better performances. If they still get the results, it's fine. But I don't know if it's going to be tenable, and we'll see what happens in the next 5 games. Let's turn our attention now to Thomas Tuchel. It's not that big a shock, but this morning it became official that he is parting ways, or that Bayern Munich and he are parting ways at the end of the season. Let's just start there. Is this the right move to wait to the end of the year? They're in the middle of, obviously, lost to Lazio in the first round of the Champions League round of 16. They're 8 points adrift of Leverkusen. They've lost 3 straight for the first time since 2015. When that point they'd already won the Bundesliga, the season was over.
Yeah.
That's the situation they're in right now. Does it make sense to keep him around till the end of May?
Dalen, I don't understand the decision, to be quite honest. I mean, obviously they're still competing in the Champions League. That is the most realistic silverware for them at this point, because I don't see them making that gap on Leverkusen. So maybe that's where Bayern have kind of hung their hat in terms of any silverware this season. So I guess, I mean, you see Barcelona do the same with Xavi and give him to the end of the season. Bayern Munich, it's a strange one. I'll be honest. I thought he'd have been gone by now, particularly after that Leverkusen result, and just say, listen, we got this wrong again, because they did exactly the same with Nagelsmann. I thought that was premature and poorly thought out, and now it's kind of looking that way, and a lot of the higher ups in Munich kind of hiding behind that decision. So now, what do you do in terms of saving face from what I thought was an awful decision just over 12 months ago, and it's turned out exactly that. So you let Thomas Tuchel kind of limp along till the end of the season, let him be the one who takes all of the blame. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. Again, I'm not sure what to make of it all, but that's Bayern's decision. We see how it turns out. It's a difficult one to explain.
Yeah, they're in danger of not holding that trophy, the Bundesliga trophy, for the first time in now 11 seasons. 2011-12 was the last time it happened.
I mean, you talk about 2015, Darren, last time they lose 3. When last have we, in February, said that Bayern Munich's most realistic chance at silverware is the Champions League? I mean,
and that's not even that. You're just because they're still in the competition. It doesn't seem realistic that they're going to go win the thing. That seems crazy.
You get knocked out to Saarbrücken in the cup. You're 8 points behind Leverkusen. I mean, and you know, just because of how poorly I think thought out and executed the dismissal of Nagelsmann was, you've now kind of found yourself in this weird position of having to limp along almost to justify it. It's just weird.
Yeah, and then Nagelsmann, he was let go. I believe they were 1 point adrift of the top of the table, and they had just gone out in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. So it's not like it was the same comparative situation. Because right now, and that also, they won the title last year. Dortmund gave it to them. Like that was not like they went and earned it. Dortmund,
that's right.
They gave it away. Right. So it's not pretty. That said, when you look at the roster, look at the squad. There's still so many good players. Obviously, you bring in Kane. Poor Harry Kane just cannot seem to. It's not allowed to win a trophy. It seems it's just that's not fair. But how much? If you're in that locker room, are you looking around at each other? Is this about us? Are we failing, or is Tuchel really the issue there? Like what's the situation?
Listen, I think Thomas Tuchel is an incredible manager, and he showed that. And yes, I think his reputation took a bit of a dent at PSG. But I mean, I think that's a whole other conversation. PSG and the dressing room and the manager, that's a whole other discussion. I thought he was dismissed unfairly at Chelsea prematurely. Again, that was a ridiculous decision on my part and on their part. And when you see how things have gone for Chelsea since, it kind of backs that up. And you thought that this Dortmund job was perfect for him in coming in. And again, never mind if we could try to separate the Nagelsmann issue, but just coming in, you have an incredible squad. You know Dortmund are always going to be thereabouts in terms of, well, you expect Bayern, you expect Bayern to win the Bundesliga. You expect them to be thereabouts in the Champions League. it's the least. That's as low a bars as you'll expect, and all of a sudden it's not that way. And again, an incredible squad, in my opinion, a very good manager. I just can't help but look at what's happening upstairs. But inevitably, when things are going wrong on the pitch, you look at either the squad or the manager, and you wonder who bears the brunt of that responsibility. Tuchel is, but I think a lot of that squad are also underperforming.
Yeah, that seems true to say the least. Let's ask this question, because Xabi Alonso, everybody is turning their attention to him now. When it was Liverpool and Klopp announced, okay, that seems obvious. You've got this situation now happens. Real Madrid, like all the clubs he's been at, and he's a club legend in some places, are available or coming available. Meanwhile, Jurgen Klopp's agent did say right afterwards, Klopp will not be taking a job for any national team or club for a year. So he tried to dispel that right away, so we can let that part go.
Yeah.
Is Xabi is it better? Should he want to go to Bayern? Should he want to go to Liverpool? Like what? And are they even the right fit? Like, give me your thoughts.
Listen, I think right now, I think Liverpool, and I say that because for Xavi to continue on the trajectory that he is, you need a stable backroom, you need a stable club hierarchy, and I'm not sure that Bayern gives that. Bayern. Football politics is front and center in terms of Bayern Munich business, and you get that. You see that at a number of clubs. Football politics is key to navigating the Real Madrid job. We've seen that in the past, and Carlo Ancelotti has managed that better than anybody else. You just don't feel it's that important. You don't feel it's that overarching at Liverpool. So he'll be given, especially as the player that he was, that the player that all those fans remember him as being, he'll have a longer honeymoon than most coming into that job. And then being able to, and English football is different in that regard, in how managers are able to make decisions themselves. I think it's the next best step for Xabi Alonso, and then you get that right, and then that just opens up every single job in world football for you.
Yeah, I think we commonly overlook the alignment, how critical it is from the front office in any sport. Front office, manager, head coach, and then your squad. All those things got to be aligned with a similar vision and people executing at a high level and doing their jobs. Liverpool's proven that from the front office standpoint, they can do it. We know the squad can do it, and they can put a manager to do it. Bayern Munich, ironically, for a club that has been running so well for so many years, the last 18 months have been rocky, as you just said. We talked about the dismissal of Nagelsmann, the hiring of Tuchel, now this situation. Do you trust them to get this right, though? Like, if it's not Xabi, if it's somebody else, do you trust that they're going to make the right decision here to get Bayern back to the table stakes you outlined, which is Bundesliga titles, Pokal finals at least, and getting to the Champions League, really semifinals, is kind of like their bar.
Well, the big question is, who is the right man? And I'm not sure that outside of Xabi Alonso, who's the right candidate? Hansi Flick is the name that's been mentioned most. But that's kind of going back to where you once were. Which I certainly don't have much of a problem with. But in terms of getting it right, I don't think that there are many options just kind of sprinting to the head of the queue here. So can they get it right? I think they need to dial back and maybe again retrace some of those old footsteps. Otherwise, I'm not 100% certain that they can that they can not interrupt, not interfere with whoever it is comes in, and if that person isn't able to manage the politics of FC Hollywood as Jan continues to refer to them as, I'm not sure how you get the best out of that job.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out, to say the least. And if Tuchel does remain in control of the team, at least for the rest of the season. You mentioned FC Hollywood as in Germany, which becomes FC Hollywood, and in the States now is Lionel Messi and Inter Miami. Let's just say there's a scheduling issue here. When MLS is starting the night of a Champions League tie in the middle of February, where there's still a foot of snow outside of my house, it's not the best time to kind of drop into American sports, but here we are. They're playing Real Salt Lake tonight. They are by far the favorites to win MLS Cup, plus 3-1. The closest next two teams are Columbus Crew, the defending champs, at 8-1, and LAFC, the defending runner-up, at 8-1. When you look at obviously Suarez coming in and all the hoopla and the preseason debacle is a strong word, but there was a lot of stuff going on that wasn't all positive in terms of how Inter Miami did their preseason. Like, are they a deserving favorite to be the favorite to win this cup?
Let me say, if Inter Miami played anybody else in MLS in a one-off game or a two-headed tie right now, I'd back Inter Miami. But of course, it's not that simple. My issue with Inter Miami is while it's an incredibly stacked squad, it's an aging squad, and it's a tough league. Between the length of the 9 months, the travel, and then again throw in Copa America, throw in the Paris Olympics, that will again kind of not stretch and test the squad through the summer months, then going into playoffs. My concern around Inter Miami is not about whether the squad is talented enough. It's about whether they have the legs, how they can cope with injury or omission of any one of their stars. And while you saw Lionel Messi come in last season and pull up all kinds of trees, and all of a sudden had Inter Miami dreaming of playoffs, he goes away on internet for a World Cup qualifier, comes back injured, and Inter Miami simply cannot cope without him. And that will always be the Achilles heel to who this Inter Miami is. Not whether they're good enough one-on-one or in a home and away tie. It's whether they can sustain this for the length and the testing that MLS continues to prove to be.
That's what I feel like. The odds have to bake in the Messi factor, and this is for people watching outside the States. Like SportsCenter and ESPN, they don't lead shows with soccer outside of World Cup games, and maybe that's it for the U. And maybe that's it. So Messi became, daily television, and our guy Luis Miguel Echegaray was literally just following Messi around for weeks at a time. That's the type of hoopla that he created and kind of attention he created. But that said, that doesn't mean you're going to guarantee results. And when you're playing through the summer months and into the fall months, this calendar is hard. When you're flying back to Argentina to still play for them if it's going World Cup qualifying, but obviously Copa America this summer. Like, who was the most important player or players on this team outside of him and some of those core older guys? Because he could miss 6 to 10 games in the summer, which is a third of the season.
Jeez, I couldn't. I'm not sure who's the key player outside of those core guys. And the trouble is, well, again, we spoke so much about Inter Miami the second half of last season. We didn't before. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason that Inter Miami drew no headlines before the arrival of Lionel Messi. They were a poor team. And once, as I mentioned, once Messi got injured, they went back to being a poor team. Yeah. And that for me is a big challenge for them. With their players, albeit aging players, I think the others have raised their game, and you saw that, and play with their confidence. But without them, all of a sudden, they just went back to who they once were. And that for me was the biggest disappointment of those last few games of last season's regular season. That a team that had shown so well in the few weeks previous, you take away the spark that is Lionel Messi, and players who were outstanding, all of a sudden regressed, and that was a disappointing.
And that's too, and that's, as American soccer fans trying to understand, he excelled in the Leagues Cup and the U.S. Open Cup, which are two different cup competitions, one between the U.S. and Mexico involved. The U.S. Open Cup is more like the FA Cup historically, or other open division tournaments like that around the world. The actual league, they continued to struggle in, and then once he was hurt, never got over the hump.
Yeah.
So let me ask you kind of a bigger picture question. We have the 2026 World Cup coming up. As we mentioned, how important Messi has been, how much attention he's gotten. I don't see them winning the MLS Cup. There's no way I would bet it. Those odds don't provide any value, and I don't think they're likely to win it at all, given everything we've just said. What is the mission? What is success in that standard we're looking at from a global soccer perspective and a micro perspective with America and also hosting the World Cup in a couple of years?
Wow, that's a good question, Don. I'm listening in terms of I am a huge fan of US soccer and MLS. I went to university here in the US, so I know exactly what the soccer scene was through those late 80s and early 90s. So recognizing how far it's come in the 30 years since, I cannot help but be a fan. Of course, US also hosted a World Cup back in 1994, and you saw how much the game grew then as a result of that. Going into 2026, I would like to see MLS continue on its upward trend in terms of global visibility. More and more people taking note of what's happening here in the US in terms of that league. Do I see it ever competing with any of Europe's big five? No, certainly not during my lifetime. But that's fine. I think the league continues to show strength in developing players, maybe to move on to those European leagues, and give other players who maybe fall just outside of that level real opportunity to play a high level of the game. And I think the World Cup again brings the highest level of the sport to these shores and makes new fans of the game. I think that is a true value that hosting World Cups bring. In seeing the best that the world has to offer, I think you cannot help but make new fans. You cannot help but bring new eyeballs to this sport. And that I hope is the legacy of 2026.
You preach, my man, preach. I will say this, in the short term, I've seen more Messi pink jerseys or the black jersey with the pink on of Inter Miami than any Inter Miami jerseys ever. They're all over. Little kids are wearing them all over the place. Yep. So the start of the season is important to just continue to build popularity and build an awareness around the league in this country. And again, to your point, globally, Messi is a draw. People are paying attention to what he's doing. Early season. This is a bit of a tough question, but our producer Rob put it in here, so I'll ask it for you. First 10 games. Their record is what after 10 games?
Oh, I'm going to say their record is 6 wins, 2 draws, 2 losses.
6-2-2. Okay, I'm sure they would take that. And I do believe the U.S. Open Cup stuff, they get to focus on league games early, which actually helps them kind of bet in, and we'll see if they actually have success. Shaka, great stuff. Appreciate your time as always. Catch ESPN FC live here on YouTube Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Eastern time, and then you can get the show every day, 6 o'clock Eastern. We out.